Hey guys, welcome back to Prep Talks. Today we have Anshu Sadaria, who is a software engineer at Google, and he has over 33,000 followers on LinkedIn, and he has been mentoring students on LinkedIn for a long, long time. So let's welcome Anshul. So hey Anshul, thanks for coming to our channel. Uh, Before we start, so if you want to briefly introduce yourself, and that would be nice.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Hi all the viewers and subscribers. I am Anshul Sadaria from Google. I'm a software engineer at Google, and it's been almost 1.5 year I have been at Google. Exciting experience and happy to connect with you.
Yeah, thanks again, Anshul, to coming to our channel. So we will straight jump into the most burning questions that students have written to us. So first of all, like if you
Sure.
want to briefly explain your like how you got into Google and your brief experience and like what is the interview process?
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So there are multiple ways in which you can get into Google. For me, it was on-campus placements. So the process for on-campus and off-campus is a little different. So let me just go through my process right now, and then we
Sure.
can chat more about what are the other ways. Okay.
Yeah.
So talking about my experience, like first of all, in on-campus placements, like it's a common pool, right? 250 students, you all fill in your details and all of those things, and those details are sent to Google, and based on those details, your resume and the coding round, you get shortlisted. And when I talk about coding round, okay, there are a lot of students who tell me, ki, Bhaiya, like I solved both the questions, whereas my friend solved none of them, but still my friend was selected.
Yeah.
So I just want to add more insight onto what the coding round actually means in this entire process. Okay, it is just one parameter which gives numerical data, numerical insight to the recruiters. It is
Hmm.
not filtering criteria. Matlab, it's not like there is a input pool and then coding round is going to screen them. No, there
Hmm.
are a lot of other factors, including your resume in which your projects are seen, mentoring experience, like you
Hmm.
are a
Hmm.
teaching assistant at your college or anything like that. Cumulative assessment is done in which your coding round is just one numerical data,
Hmm.
nothing more than that. Okay, so based on them, and if I talk about myself, I solved one question out of two. Okay, so yeah, after that we get shortlisted for the interviews, and you know how hectic the campus interviews are. Like they start day zero in the midnight. So there were three interviews that I went through, and usually in on-campus interviews there will be three. If you are positively trending. If you're
Hmm.
negatively trending, then maybe matlab, they will say bye bye after two rounds. And if they're confused a little, then they may take an extra round.
Extra. Yeah.
So for me, there were three rounds, and I was told to hold my seats tight after 4:30 a.m. in the morning. And I got the news from the recruiter that we want to meet you. Can we have a little chat regarding your offer at 12 p.m. the next morning? And yeah, that was the simple sweet process for on campus. But there are a lot of other dynamics which go on because in on campus you are sitting with a bunch of your peers in the same room, right? There are 20, 30 peers. You know, all of them are equally good. You
Hmm.
know each and every one of them,
Yeah.
you know. So the pressure is quite tight as compared to off campus interviews. But yeah, we will have a chat about how we can cope up with the stress and all of that in the video
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah, I also agree with you. Like I hear a lot of students saying like the online rounds are pretty random. The selection process in that is pretty random, but behind the scenes there are a lot of points that are taken into care before
Yes.
like getting a student into the second rounds. Okay.
Yeah.
So
But
next,
another
yeah,
detail that I want to add,
yeah.
if you don't mind, I just want to add one more detail. So there is a lot of talks about resume screening. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like is it ATS, is it computer
Yeah.
screened, or is it manual? So I just want to throw light to this particular process as well. Each and every resume for university graduates. So it doesn't matter whether you have a two-column resume or one-column resume, or whether you have put keywords properly or not. It is
Mhm.
manually screened by each and every resume is manually screened by the recruiters. Okay,
Okay.
so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This is a big myth. Like all the resume go through an ATS and all that, and nobody looks at them manually. Okay, and I would say next question can be like, is there any changes in the interview process along the years? Like, I think your interviews was campus interviews were 2, 3 years back. So, has there any changes in the has there any improvements?
So not exactly changes, but we don't ask system design questions. We
Okay.
have been told a strict no not to ask any system design questions because these are freshers. They don't have any industry
Hmm.
exposure. So those
Okay.
questions are strictly to be avoided. The focus will be on data structures and algorithms
Hmm.
completely. And along with that, the candidates would have been told that there will be a GNL round, which is Googliness and leadership round.
Okay.
So yeah, you can expect questions based on that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen a lot of companies like nowadays like asking freshers system design questions. But I also agree with that. Like students who are just undergraduate, they have made some college projects. They may not have the right knowledge for building big scalable systems. Yeah, it doesn't make
Correct.
sense to. Yeah.
I mean, there will be a little skewness because in my college, if I talk about, some did some good internships,
Yeah.
some did not so good internships. Like I worked on a research project. I was not building any systems. I was an intern. I was an intern at Adobe,
Hmm.
whereas where I worked on a research project which went to a patent.
Okay.
So even though I had some work experience, I didn't build a system. But that
System. Yeah.
doesn't tell I don't have system building
System.
skills or I
Yeah.
don't have problem solving skills, right?
Yeah.
So it would be unfair to me if such a question was asked to me and I was not able to
Hmm.
solve it.
Hmm. So I think it would be more fair if the round is a bit tailored to the resume, I would say. Like if your resume is research background, then the question should be on that. And if it's on building scalable system, then system design interview round is fairly acceptable.
Yep.
Now we will move to like a bit controversial topic that is going on LinkedIn and other student community platforms. That is CP versus development. So, what are your thoughts on that? So, like a lot of people are split between these two domains.
So those people who feed on topics like CP versus what was the other dev? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So those people who feed on CP versus dev, those are number mongers. They want to
Hmm.
increase their numbers. Okay. If you see, like, I won't say the names, okay, those who are
Hmm.
involved in that controls and all of that. But if you see from the side that we discussed, we never said CP versus dev. We
Hmm.
just said how important CP is as well.
Yeah.
Those who say CP versus dev, it's like, matlab, what do you want to choose? Do you want your legs or do you want your hands? Right? Both of them are important to do daily, day-to-day routine.
Hmm.
Dev is as much important as CP is, but opportunities for both of them would vary. Your skills in both of them would vary. If you think you are really great at CP, then don't stop doing it. Continue doing it. If you think you are like you are very passionate about development, it can be open source development, it can be Android, it can be like web dev, any sort of thing like that. So put 100% dedication to it. But when I talk about CP and like I maybe your next question would be, is CP mandatory, right? So I will answer that ahead itself. So CP is not mandatory. In one of my LinkedIn posts, I mentioned this, that doing CP is like going to gym,
Hmm.
and increasing your problem solving skills or problem solving appetite is like becoming fit. To become fit, it's not necessary that you go to gym. Okay, you can do cardio, you can do jogging, you can do yoga. There are lots of other things that you can do to become fit. In the same way, to increase your problem solving appetite, you can do a lot of different things. You can do heavy lit coding, you can do CP.
Hmm.
If you talk about me, I never got time to attend the contest because they are at the time of my dinner, so I never used to attend them.
Hmm.
But I always used to like participate in it virtually. So in Code Forces and CodeShip, you can participate in the
Yeah.
contest virtually. Same environment, but at a different time, like flexible time whenever you are free. So I always used to do that, and it helped me a lot, to be honest. Because there are time constraints. You have to prepare the test cases. You have to think, where what are the boundary cases where your code can break, all those things like that, which doesn't happen a lot in lit code. I mean,
Hmm.
you just try to solve the problem. If it says wrong answer, then after wrong answer you think that okay, it's a wrong answer. Now how
Hmm.
can I correct it, right? Whereas in
Yeah.
CP, you have to like take precautions to have as many least wrong answers or TLE or things like that. So in that sense, CP helps a lot. But as I told you, going to gym is not the only way to get fit, but it's a very, very effective way. So yeah. And development, obviously, you're going to do development in your companies. So development is the crucial part, but problem solving skills is also really important.
Nice. Yeah, I would also agree with that. Like everything in computer science is binary, but not this topic. So it's not binary like one or zero. So yeah, so you have to take this with a pinch of salt, like what you want to uh, like
Correct.
pursue. Next question would be, what are the key traits that a Google interviewer look into a candidate? Like problem solving skill is a given. So apart from that, what do you think are the most important traits in a good candidate?
So there is a set of rubrics given to evaluate the candidates. I won't go into the exact details because that will be
Yeah.
confidential. But just talking broadly over it. Okay. So how good is your code quality?
Mm,
Okay. How good is your choice of data structures and algorithms? How good are your communication skills? How efficient you are in coding? Okay.
mm,
So let's say you and me both are giving the same question, like both are asked the same question. I solved the same question in 40 minutes, whereas you solved the question in 20 minutes. So both of us solved the question, both of us are good in data structures and algorithms, but you are
mhm,
definitely more efficient than me, right? So in that sense, efficiency is also a very crucial metric when it comes to taking the decision whether to hire a candidate or not. And yeah, partially into the design aspect. Talking about design, it's not the system design thing, but how you design your solution. Choice of data structures, algorithms. What are the trade-offs that you considered? For example, it's a graph problem. Then you need to consider the trade-off between whether BFS or DFS. If
mm.
BFS, why BFS? Maybe it's the shortest path problem.
And as you said, like you were a campus hire. So what are the other ways, or I would say, like what are the one of the best ways to getting into Google other than on-campus hires?
So I will go chronologically. When you
Mm,
start going to college, I will go in that particular order only. So in the second year, like after the second year or after the third year, if you are a dual degree candidate,
mhm,
there is something known as step intern.
mm,
Okay. So step intern, you can check out the details of step intern. It's the position is open right now for step intern India, first of all. So what is step intern? So step intern is basically meant to uplift the deprived communities in a particular country.
okay.
Okay. So if you're applying for step intern in UK, the definition of deprived communities will be a little different than
Different.
what it is in India.
Yeah.
Okay. So in India, statistically speaking, it has been female dominant
Mm,
because patriarchy and all of that. So that's the
mm,
definition of deprived community in India. Having said that, it's not that male candidates are not selected at all.
mm,
Historically, there have been instances of male candidates also getting selected, but it has been highly skewed.
mm,
Like the definition of deprived community in India is dominantly female candidates. So for female candidates specifically, it's a very good opportunity because right now I work with a lot of female colleagues who like joined into Google via step intern. Like they were step intern, then next year they were intern, and then next year they got a PPO and they are working full time now. So
okay.
it's a very good way. Like they get a head start. That's
Mm,
it. Coming into Google. The second, like chronologically speaking, now coming to the third year for the 4 year course, 4 year program candidates. So there is something known as software engineering intern, which we are all aware about.
mm,
Along with that, from this year onwards, there is something which is known as winter internships, which was earlier
mm.
not seen for Google. Amazon and other companies used to have that 6 months winter
Oh,
internship starting
okay.
from Jan to June.
Semester long
So this year,
internships.
Google, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So this year, Google started the 6 month internship, which is known as winter internships,
Mm,
and summer internships, as usual, 10 to 12 weeks long during your summer vacations. So those are the two internships. Winter internship is mainly for candidates who are in their final year. In some colleges, they allow the last semester to be like
mm,
some sort of a project or some sort of an internships, wherein they don't have to actually attend the college, attend the courses. They can do any internship of their choice.
mm,
So yeah, but if your college allows in your third year as well, so there is no such strict rule that only last year candidates are getting shortlisted or getting selected. It depends on how flexible your college is. Okay, so ask your college before applying, right? And the next one is something known as application engineer internship. So it also started last year. It was not seen before in Google India. So application engineer is a little different from software engineer. It involves, like, you can check out the definition on the careers page. It will be more elaborate.
mm,
But if you ask me in this particular video, what does it mean? It means like it deals with some part of operating systems, some part of networking, a little bit of DevOps and all of that, not Kubernetes and all of that specifically, but how somewhere related to SRE, but not SRE, somewhere related to SWE, but not SWE, So how you can keep your application running, what are all the modules that you link to build an application and all of that, right? So it's a little different. You can check out the requirements in it. Those are explicitly mentioned that what is expected from my application engineer. So those are the three types of internships that come in your penultimate year or the final year.
Fine.
Then comes your on-campus and off-campus placements. Pretty straightforward. Like off-campus placements usually start accepting applications in August or September, probably, and then like right now, from the December 1st, the on-campus placements will begin. So there will be a bit of break in the off-campus recruitment, and then again it will start from Jan or Feb till the semester ends. So it's divided into two batches, the off-campus placements. And there's something else which is known as PhD fellowship or something like that. I'm not getting the correct word, but it is meant for candidates who are interested in research. So the requirements can also be seen from the careers page. So basically, it's preferable if you are a MS student or a BS student with some research background. Okay. So if you are interested to pursue some research, then you can enroll in the program, which is for 2 years, and then you can do a PhD or an MS from anywhere, right? So this is a 2-year program only. It's not a full-time thing. It's a 2-year program wherein you will work on research projects and all of that. So yeah, that was the last one which comes to my mind, I think. So these are the different ways in which you can get into Google.
I think you explained like pretty elaborately what are the different ways. And so a next question would be like, what do you think is the work culture in Google? How is the work-life balance? And on top of that, my real question would be, what do you think is the one biggest reason students should be motivated to prepare for Google and should be looking forward to working into a company like Google?
So one reason why you should choose Google is the flexibility that you get being a Googler and the ownership that you get over the projects. Because being a university recruiter, university graduate, I was given a complete ownership of a project in my first year itself, which not a lot of companies will give you. And the level of micromanagement is very, very less. I mean, there's no micromanagement at all. You drive the project end to end, so that gives you a sense of confidence, and the team has faith in you because you are selected in Google for a particular reason, right? And talking about flexibility, it's not just the flexibility of working hours. Like sometimes if I wake up early in the morning, I work early in the morning. Sometimes I work late in the night. Sometimes I work in the day. So I have that complete flexibility, how I want to work, where I want to work. I can work from home. I can work from office whenever it starts. So I have all sorts of flexibility. And another important flexibility is that I can choose whatever project I want to work on. It's not that my manager will come and say, okay, from tomorrow onwards, you're going to work on this particular project. During all my one-on-ones, we have this healthy discussion. Like I have this healthy discussion with my manager that, okay, what are all sorts of projects that are going on in our team currently? What are the progress going on in each and every project? Which project is good? Which project is based on a particular technology? It's a very healthy discussion. And then it's my responsibility to choose a project that I want to work on, not the other way around. The other thing is that the promotion process is really like unique, which I was not aware of. As a candidate, you apply yourself for promotion and not the other way around. It might be a similar process in a lot of these top tech giants, but as a university graduate, it was a little unique for me. It was a little surprising for me that currently I am an L3. I am a L3 engineer. So if I think that I can work consistently at the L4 level, and I have showed historically my appetite to work at the L4 level, then I can promote myself. I can like put in my application for promotion myself, and then the hiring committee decides and evaluates on that. Another flexibility is that you can switch teams at your will.
I would say like we have seen like, so you must be familiar with Clement, who also runs the YouTube channel. And so he talks in his videos like his selection in Google was purely based on projects and not necessarily on DSA. he's good on DSA, but his major key points was his projects. So do you think like a candidate can get into Google purely based on his resume, which are on projects, have you seen any of your colleagues who is selected based upon projects, or do you think DSA is the necessary thing?
Uh, I am like when I talk about my experience, it will be a little biased because I have seen candidates at L3 and L4 level only.
Okay. Yeah.
Like obviously my manager is L6, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he entered into Google. I
Yeah.
have seen candidates entering into Google at L3 and L4 level only.
Okay.
So talking about them, it's not like DSA is the Brahmastra because
Mm.
a few of my colleagues joined at L4 from other companies. So DSA is one of the aspects. Along with that, when you talk about Clement and
Mm.
projects,
Mm.
there comes the system design part, which is asked for the L4 engineers.
Mm.
So there is a healthy discussion based on what projects you have done and the system design approach.
Okay.
And based on that, also you are evaluated for L3 plus levels.
Mm-hmm.
But talking about L3 only, it's going to be DSA because
Mm.
that's what the rubric says.
Okay. Makes sense. And you must have like taken a lot of interviews, mock interviews as well. So what do you think is the best way to get unstuck in an interview? So we see candidates get stuck in a particular question. So what do you think students can apply? What techniques students can apply to get unstuck?
So there is no such like golden technique to get unstuck. But what I have noticed from the interviews I have taken and the
Hmm.
mock interviews as well, is that whenever a candidate is stuck, as an interviewer, it's your job to help the candidate. Okay, you don't want
Hmm.
to see them fail because you're investing 45 minutes and then writing the elaborate feedback, and you don't want to go into waste. Don't want
Hmm.
it to go into waste. So we give hints, not like we spoon feed them the solution, but we give them hints to unblock them.
Hmm.
For example, in one of my recent interviews, okay, I asked a question which was based on graphs, and the candidate was stuck doing some array modulation kind of array manipulation kind of a thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I knew if the candidate is going to remain in the particular thought process, he or she is not going to be
Not
able to
going to
solve
solve.
it.
Yeah.
So I gave them hint that how they are visualizing the problem, how they
Hmm.
can visualize the problem to think of it as nodes and passing on the information from one node to the other in that way.
Okay.
But I surprisingly noticed that the candidate was stuck in their own thought process. I mean, they
Hmm.
were listening to me, but they were not processing it. They were not able to
Processing.
understand the hints or comprehend them in a positive way. So that is really important. How good are your hearing skills?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And the next part comes is how well you communicate. In one of the interviews, like the candidate was stuck into their own thought process without speaking anything for 10 to 15 minutes.
Hmm.
I obviously kept on poking them that what are you thinking? Let me know so that I can
Hmm.
help you out. But they were like that, give me some time, I'm still thinking, I'm still pondering on the solution. So that doesn't help. If you're not going to speak what you are thinking, how is the interviewer going to understand what you are thinking and then unstuck you, right?
Yeah.
So speaking when the need arises and hearing always, okay? Hearing not when the need arises. You need
Hmm.
to hear 24/7 when the interview is going on.
Yeah.
So hearing throughout the interview is really important.
Yeah, I think it's really important when students try to solve the question, they get into that tunneling phase and they forget about the outer world. And I think it's really important to to take a step back and to see the problem from a different angle and to listen properly, because yeah, as you said, like no interviewer wants the candidate to fail in the interviews. So yeah.
Right.
And so I would say, like as you said, like placement season in is full swing. At December 1 would be day zero in most of the IITs as well, and Google will also be visiting a lot of campuses. And so, what do you think are the most common mistakes student makes while preparing for Google, or in general preparing for product-based companies? And any tips and tricks to finally crack Google interviews?
So one of the most common mistakes that I made, not during my campus placements, but during my internships,
Hmm.
was that I was well prepared for DSA. I was good at coding. I was a decent competitive programmer as well. But I was not able to explain the algorithms, or I was not able to explain the trade-offs properly.
Hmm.
It can be said that I was not explaining at all. It was like the interviewer asked me the question, I code it up, and it's okay, tata, bye bye.
Hmm.
But that's not how an
That,
interview goes, right?
hmm.
It's a mutual process. It's a two-way process. You say something, they say something. So the best way to get rid of the mistake that I made was to discuss problems with your friends, to like take mock interviews. That will be like kind of a formal thing, but even if like you are sitting, I'm not sure how you do it virtually right now, but when we were there in the college, we used to sit together and solve like lead code and do interview bit and geeks for geeks and
Mm,
CP. All of it was together. So after my internship, we made it a rule to discuss the problems, to discuss the solutions as well.
mhm,
So there are four bunch of us. One would come up with a DFS based solution. The other would come up with some union find sort of a solution. So there will be different sort of solutions, and we used to discuss them together. Okay, nahin, in your one, time complexity is getting affected in this particular way. In your one, the space complexity is getting affected in this particular way. So
mm,
that two-way process helped me a lot to understand that okay, this is how we can communicate. This is how different approaches can be discussed,
mm.
and that is really important. And that was the one fundamental mistake that I kept on repeating again and again for 6 consecutive interviews in my internship. So try to avoid it, please.
Yeah, I would agree to that as well. I also like when some student asked me that peer programming is the most important thing in your college life. Make your I think see fellow students as your peers, not as a competition. That would help a lot. Uh,
Right.
yeah. So yeah, that's it. And so like I think we have covered a lot of questions from the students, and the insights you provide is will be really helpful for students. And I think I should thank you. I am really thankful to you to coming to our channel and sharing your insights. Any last words you want to say before we close off?
So one thing that I noticed, and it's a life advice. Okay, it's not just a college advice, or it's not just a preparation advice. uh, Momentum is really important in whatever
Mm,
process you are going through in your life. Okay, I am going through a project. Momentum is really important. If okay, I will tell you in your language only. For the college students, so you are preparing for interviews. You are doing someone is doing lead coding, someone is doing interview bit, someone is doing CP. Momentum is important. Sometimes what happens is that you get disappointed, you are not able to solve some questions, and you face some rejections in internships or placements. That momentum is bound to break. You cannot avoid that. Okay, momentum is going to break at some point,
yeah.
but it's really important that how you recover from that momentum loss. Okay, so the thing that helped me a lot in my college life was to be around amazing people, amazing professors.
Mhm,
As college students, we tend to interact a lot less with our professors. We interact a lot with our friends. But I personally have found that interacting with them, obviously they're not going to help with your DSA, okay,
mhm,
but they have seen a lot in their life. And I was personally like grateful to have amazing professors with whom I could share anything and everything based on like my breakups or my rejections or anything. I used to
mhm,
discuss with them everything. So talking to them helped me a lot. So make sure if your momentum breaks, okay. uh, I will take a basic example. You are lead coding, you are solving some problems and you are not able to solve them for 2 consecutive days, and now you are disappointed कि, मतलब, अब मैं छोड़ दूंगा सब कुछ, अब मैं कुछ नहीं
mhm,
करूंगा. So that is not going to help. Start with very easy problems. Even if you have solved them previously, start with those like
mhm.
very cakewalk type problems. Even if you solve it, you know in your mind that obviously it's an easy one, but
Easy.
seeing that green tick, seeing that successful
Yeah.
word written, it will help you boost your momentum, even if it's slowly, you know. So that is the process that I used to gain my momentum back, because I have faced a lot of rejections in my
Mhm.
life, and that's how it helped. So yeah, best of luck, guys.
Okay, I think I will thank again. Like, thanks Anshul to for agreeing to come into our channel, and thanks again for your time.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot, Joban, for contacting me for this. I hope this helps the student.
Definitely, it would help. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye bye.
That's it for today, guys. Please post your questions in the comments below, and I'll be back with a new guest. Thanks for now. Goodbye.